I'm going to show you how to choose Sears subject headings for a book. I have this book here, Bridge Across the Sky by Freeman Ng. I'm going to first think about what I already know this book is about, and I know this book is a novel in verse. I also know it's about a family that arrives at Angel Island and the harsh prison-like conditions they experience being detained, as well as the racism and prejudice they experience. I'm going to first look at my CIP page, and this CIP page does have a lot of data. There's one sentence to describe a summary of this book. In 1924, at the Angel Island Immigration Station, teen Chinese immigrant Su Tai-go is awakened to the political realities of his new home as he waits to find out if he and his family will be allowed into the country. So that gives me a pretty short sentence about it. So I'm going to look at another source for a summary, but I'm also going to just look at the CIP page does provide some subject headings, and these would be subject headings from the Library of Congress. And actually, they say this is the children's subject headings from Library of Congress: novels in verse, emigration and immigration fiction, Chinese United States fiction, Angel Island Immigration Station in California fiction, Angel Island, California history, 20th century fiction. And then there's another heading for novels in verse for genre and historical fiction. But I do want to kind of get more of an idea about what this book is about with a better summary. So I'm going to check Follett Tidal Wave for this. And anyone with an educational email may get a free account. So I'm going to sign in and search for my book, Bridge Across the Sky. Click on the title, and you can see there's all kinds of data about this book. Some of the physical description information is up here, and down here are tags and subjects. And subject headings are listed under library classifications. These other terms, though, are also helpful for me to understand more about what this book is about. Some of these are metadata terms or tags, curriculum tags as well. So that's kind of nice to get that more insight about this book. And I can also see there is a more detailed summary of this book from the publisher that I would use in my 520 field rather than the one sentence that was on the CIP page. And this summary also gives me more ideas about, again, what this book is about, such as the Chinese Exclusion Act. Also talks about how the main character Tai finds hope when he reads poems that were carved into the walls by previous people who had been detained there. So I get more insight into this book. It's also really nice because you can read and access full text reviews. So now I'm going to use this Sears List 22nd edition, which is a free version online and is searchable, to cross-reference some of the subject headings that were on the CIP page, as well as any of the terms that I want to look up for what this book is about that I found in Tidal Wave. So this 22nd edition is available to scroll through, and also you can use the magnifying glass to search the terms. This is a 2018 edition. We're working on providing you a link to the newest edition online, and it works a little differently. So once we have that link, we will also make a video how to use that edition. This information at the beginning of the Sears book, as we scroll through, is helpful information that you should peruse through. And I recommend that you read the section here on starting on page A43 about maintaining a catalog and cataloging in the 21st century, as well as this page here, A53, about headings that you can add as a cataloger. Sears states here they're not intended to be a complete list of subject headings, but to provide a list of the commonly used headings and a pattern for creating new headings. The actual list of headings begins here on page 68, or page 1 of the actual text. The headings are arranged alphabetically, and topical headings in bold are the main headings. So if we move on to the next page, you'll see these terms that I gave the abbreviations for in the slideshow: broader term, narrow term, use for. You'll see them a lot of times as BT, NT, UF. So these abbreviations will tell you which term you should use. So for instance, if you looked up abductions as a subject heading, it'll tell you not to use abduction. Instead, you should use kidnapping. I'm going to search for one of the subject headings that was on our CIP page, which is immigration and emigration, for this book, Bridge Across the Sky. And you can see it shows up a lot of times as a subdivided term. So I'm going to look for the one that is a main term. And I think this here, yes, will bring me to the main term, immigration and emigration. So if I zoom in, I can see this is the topical heading, immigration and emigration, and it says to use for materials on migration from one country to another. There's also information, see also names of countries within the subdivision, immigration and emigration. So I could start with the topical heading, United States, and then the subdivided top heading would be immigration and emigration. However, I'm just going to stick with immigration and emigration as a subject heading here. I could add a subfield for V, which is for the form or genre, and I could put fiction. So my final subject heading will be immigration and emigration with a subfield V of fiction. I'm going to search for another subject heading that was on our CIP page, which is Chinese. And I'm going to scroll in down here looking for where it might show up as the broader term. And I'm going to look under ethnic groups. And here we have Chinese as a broad term, the broadest term, with Canada or Chinese Americans. I'm going to use Chinese Americans as my next subject heading. And again, I'm going to use a genre form of fiction, which is the V subfield. So next I'm going to do another search for a subject heading that was listed on our CIP, and that is for Angel Island. And Angel Island does not show up in Sears as a subject heading. I'm going to just keep the heading from the Library of Congress and still add this to my list for this book, because I know that my teachers do teach about Angel Island, so a student or teacher may search for that subject term. And the next term I'm thinking about is going back to the data that I found in Follett. Although they weren't library subject headings, I did like this term that I thought my students would search for subjects about, and that this book is about, which is racial discrimination. So I'm going to go back to my Sears and search for that term as a subject heading. And can zoom in and it will explain how to use this term. It says I may subdivide it geographically, and it says to use this term for materials on the restriction or denial of rights, privileges, or choice because of race. Materials on prejudicial attitudes about particular groups because of their race are entered under racism. And it also says to use race discrimination for the term racial discrimination. So I'm going to use both subject headings. I've decided I'm going to use race discrimination as a subject heading and racism as a subject heading, because I feel like they're both terms my students and teachers would use, and this book is about both of those terms. Finally, going back to the CIP one more time, There are two more subject headings I want to include for this record, and those are in the genre form subject heading, which is 655. And the CIP gave me a form subject heading of novels in verse and a genre subject heading of historical fiction. And I'm going to include those both as 655 fields as well. Here is the final list of subject headings that I've created for my book, Bridge Across the Sky. You can see 650 are the topical headings, and the A is the heading name, and V is for the form. So I have immigration and emigration, Chinese Americans, racial discrimination, and racism as my topical subject headings. I also have a geographical, which was, if you remember from the slideshow, 651 are geographical subject headings. And I have a geographical subject heading of Angel Island, California. These subdivisions, X is for a general subdivision, Y is for a chronological subdivision, and V is for form. And then finally, 655 are genre form subject headings, which I have novels in verse and historical fiction. One final important thing to note is that for your assignment, which is due February 8th, the Sears and Dewey Proficiency Skills Assessment, you do not need to include, as you can see, any subfields. We are simply looking for you to find main subject headings, and you do not need to know which field they're coming from, which 600 field they're coming from. So if they're topical headings or geographic headings or genre headings, you do not need to note that. Just include some subject headings. If you'd like, you can include subfield headings to go with it, but it is not required for this assignment. So important to note, you do not need to include all of that detail. Which 600 field they're coming from. So if they're topical headings or geographic headings or genre headings, you do not need to note that. Just include some subject headings. If you'd like, you can include subfield headings to go with it, but it is not required for this assignment. So important to note, you do not need to include all of that detail.